Hello, hello, YouTube. Just want to bring you my fifth and final installment in the tier list series. Today we're going to be covering the minion side of things, so the minion builds. Now, minions are probably the build archetype that I know the least about in this game, so I've been asking around with my chat, asking around with people that, like, friends who play minions and main minions, and trying to get as much information from them as possible about the archetype. But just take anything I say here with a grain of salt. Because there might be some mistakes. But with that being said, though, I'm still going to showcase all of the gear that people use and just the steps that people place. Because at the very least, you can still utilize that and hopefully gain something from it. So first up, we're going to be looking at Iris 2. Now, Iris 2 is a very interesting hero. Her whole, like, hero trait and theme, the theme for Iris in general, is playing around Magi. Like Spirit Magi, and buffing them up and making like them just do more damage for you. And Iris 2's like theme and hero trait is not only do you like buff up your Spirit Magi, you take control of your Spirit Magi. And you actually play as your Spirit Magi. Which is very, very strange. So each Spirit Magi has like its own moveset. And depending on which Spirit Magi you play as your main skill, you get that Spirit Magi as like, or not main skill, but whichever Spirit Magi you like choose to take control of, you get that Spirit Magi's moveset, and you can like move around with them and use their abilities in combat. Now Spirit Magi this character is honestly very complex. There's various builds you can do, like there's playing Rock Magus, there's playing Wind Magus, Fire Magus, whatever, Lightning Magus, etc. But with all of that being said, if you want to get a lot more information about this character, if you like actually think this character looks awesome, because in terms of complexity, I think she's one of the most out there characters. She's one of the most complex characters in Torchlight. In terms of just, not complex, but one of the most unique characters in Torchlight. She truly does not function like any other character in the game. I actually would suggest like going to a friend of mine, the Uber Elite. He's like a PoE racer who also plays this game. And he's a very, 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 like, dedicated IS2 player. He plays this character every single season. He knows all about it. He's figured out all sorts of bugs and issues on the character. He's figured out all sorts of breakpoints for the character. He's done a lot for the community to, like, work on the character and progress it and like, help people understand how she works. So I definitely would highly recommend, like, trying to get in contact with him and asking him for help and questions. And definitely checking out his stream and whatnot. But with all of that being said, as we're going through this video further, Iris 2 is, in terms of the minion caster stuff, has been pretty much the strongest like minion build in the game for a while now. In past seasons, when I've watched like Iris 2's progression, they just get to like Trav 7 in an absurdly fast amount of time. They get a slight amount stuck, going from like Time Rock 8 to SS20. But then once I like reach like the SS20 point and I get through that, which they don't really even get stuck, whatever, but they just don't do as fast as like melee attackers and stuff too. They end up having like an endgame build with just like absurd mobility, insanely fast speed. Now the Rock Magus like insane mobility build did get nerfed this season quite heavily, and rightfully so. It was absolutely overtuned. It was really broken. But Iris 2 is still just a very, very strong character in progression. She's a very weird character in the sense, though, that she's constantly getting nerfed. Either intentionally or unintentionally. Like, the developers kind of just don't even, like, look at her. They just do random changes that just so happen to affect her very often. And a big issue that she, like, has is life restoration. And getting enough life restoration for a Magi. I hear Ubi tells me about that every single league, just complaining about it. But yeah, all I really know about her is that she is like the strongest minion caster, and she specifies she is very specifically good at Spirit Magi. Now continuing to her Iris 1 younger sister counterpart. Iris 1 has really good damage. So Iris 1 is much more of your standard minion build that you'd expect. Her year trait buffs up the Spirit Magi that she summons. She is also another Spirit Magi character. And, you know, she doesn't take over the Spirit Magi, she doesn't do anything stupid like that, or like special like that. She just simply, you know, has an army of Spirit Magi that fights for her and just kills the enemies for her. And in terms of damage, she actually has really good damage. Her multipliers on her year trait are very strong. She has a certain amount of damage. I don't know if she has more damage than Ice 2 or not. I'm not like sure about that. I think they're a bit too different maybe to compare 1-to-1. But the issue she has is, for some unknown reason, still to this day, unknown reason, the developers decided to just slap on to her year trait that she just takes like 60% additional damage, or like 50% additional damage. I don't know why. I really don't understand why they did that. But you used to take that node. And then they decided to nerf it by like adding that to her. It was really fucking weird. And yeah, the character overall is just a lot worse than Iris 2. I mean, there's not really much more to say about it. She's not like a terrible character by any means. She looks very interesting to play, and she's very much playable. But when I was looking at build codes and stuff, let's just put it like this. I was struggling to find build codes to like form for this video. The amount of people that play RS1 is a very, very low amount across all regions. I did manage to find one person who like cleared SS20, but you know, it took them forever to clear SS20. The character in general is like not in the greatest state and probably needs to get some buffs. But again, like always with Torchlight, you know, you can always just go off of play rate, you can always go off clear rates, things like that. Because a lot of times, a character might just fall out of favor for whatever reason, and then a lot of people don't realize the character is like actually really good, and that's why they don't play it. In the case of Iris 1, I think it's a mixture of things where it's like the character is a bit slow, you know, she doesn't have a lot of utility built in her kit, she doesn't go very fast, she doesn't have good movement options. Apparently that's an issue that people have with her. Again, I don't know much about minion builds, so I can't really comment on that. But, yeah. Damage-wise, I do know from talking to Uber that she is very good damage-wise. Or at least very decent damage-wise. Beyond that, my expertise of minion builds are not very good. There is definitely a reason why I left the minion tier list for last. Because it's the tier list I probably spent the most time going to other people, asking them for help. Now, something that's actually very interesting about minion builds that you're going to be seeing very often is, pretty much every minion build plays with the, like, 100 max energy, 100 max energy prism, except for Iris 2. Pretty much all of them just want to have a bunch of 5 links in their kit, and that just seems to be the best option for, like, every minion build. So, moving on to Moto 2. Moto 2 is a very interesting one, actually. So, Moto 2's year trait is... Okay, let me just make sure that I don't mix up Moto 2 and Moto 1. Okay, yeah. Moto 2's year trait is specialized into... specifically in synthetic troops. And the specific thing that he actually does, which is very interesting, is his trait causes the synth troops to explode. Specifically to self-destruct. So what he does is he spawns synth troops, and after they've been spawned for 1 second, they'll charge at the enemy and explode and deal a lot of damage when they explode. And his whole trait is just scaling that explosion and, you know, being focused on synth troops. No, very interestingly, the video that I recorded, which is what really confused me when I was like reading about this and talking to people about it, the video I recorded of Moto 2, as you can see, does not have any synth troops in it. This guy's not using a synth troop, he's using the new module skills. This really confused me. It still confuses me. I cannot answer to you exactly what the fuck is going on. Maybe there's a support for module skills that make them a synth troop. I didn't think to check that. I probably should have checked that, but it's one of those things that as you're recording on the fly, you think about it like, oh wait, maybe it's just that. Wait, modules count as synth troops? Oh. Never mind, modules just count as synth troops. I'm fucking stupid. They have the synth tag. Oh, well, that makes perfect sense while they play modules. But yeah, Moto 2, the reason I say it's interesting is not because he makes his synth troops kill themselves, even though that is quite funny, or sorry, not kill themselves, that they self-destruct. The reason I think it's very interesting, actually, is if you look at the West, like EU, NA, Asia, Moto 2 does not see any play at all. He's a very, very, very underplayed hero. Like, I don't actually know any Moto 2 players other than, like, Gooba. And when doing research for this video, Moto 2 has a big player base. A really big player base. The amount of people that play Moto on the Chinese server is absurd. I think he genuinely might be one of the most played characters on the Chinese server. I was so surprised to learn about that. Mia's a Moto 2 player for sure. She self-destructs on league starts. Thanks, bud. I appreciate that. Synth troops, keep yourself safe. But yeah, Moto 2 has a very large player base, and just from talking to people or talking to people, it does seem like if you want to play synth troops, Moto 2 is your best option, and the play rate did kind of reflect that. Moto 2 was played quite a fair bit more than Moto 1 was played. I'm not exactly sure about the differences in strength, but I will get to Moto 1, because Moto 1 does actually have China up in arms going into the upcoming patch. Now, I did want to actually showcase this in the video, because every person we showed off so far was showing a prairie. What I've seen from Motos in previous seasons, and very commonly from Motos, is a lot of them actually go this residency of stars in their slates. So I want to make a special note of it to showcase it in the video, that this is a very common setup that Moto players do, where they go residency of star, they go a God of Machines with 1 legendary mod, and then they get 4 good purple mods that are all getting copied over to the Residence of Stars. Now, funnily enough, the Moto players I did actually look at that did SS20 and stuff this season weren't doing this, which is very strange to me, because pretty much always this has been the meta for Moto players. Yeah, the Temu Space Rift. I think that's a good name for it. But with all that being said, I mean, if you want to play some troops, oh fuck, sorry, wrong Moto. Moto 2 is gonna be your guy for that. He's probably the best minion playstyle. Iris 2 is a minion build, yes, but her playstyle is not exactly the same as a minion build. It's kind of a bit different, considering that you're taking over the minion and all that. You know, it's not really the fairest comparison to call her a minion player. If you're a minion player and you log into Iris 2, you're probably not gonna get the experience you want from a minion build. I think Moto 2 is much closer to the expected minion experience for a minion player. And in a way, it's a Detonate Dead minion build. Now, moving on to Moto 1. Moto 1, as far as I understand, is actually quite decent. It's definitely a lot more played than Iris 1, and as a fairly decent sized player base in the Chinese server as well. Moto 1 is just your generic minion build, in the sense that his traits don't actually specify a type of minion. He is just the OG minion build. He just has overload, which just just gives buffs to your minions. Doesn't matter what the minion is. If it's a minion, it gets a buff. So he's your very, very OG traditional minion character. And I don't know exactly what happened to him, but in the new patch notes, China has been up in arms. They've been rioting. They've been not okay with the changes that have happened to Moto going into the Afterlight season. And the reason why I say I don't really know what's happening is at least looking through the various changes to Moto stuff, looking to he got a height extension. Is that why they're angry? They're mad about the height extension? You know what? Good for them. I would also be mad for the height extension. But yeah, I've been seeing a lot of like a lot of fucking raging from the Chinese on Temu. Oh, sorry, not Temu, from on TapTap. Of them just being like really mad about changes to Moto 1, really mad about something about Moto 1 going into the new season. I genuinely don't know what it is because I couldn't find anything in the patch notes. I'm assuming it is just the height extension. It has to be the height extension because I don't know what the fuck else it would have been. I personally actually do like the visual update to Moto 1. I think it looks really cool. I think it looks a lot better than the dwarf self, but I think if you've fallen in love with the dwarf, then maybe having your fat dwarf replaced with like just a tall Chad does feel like a stab in the back. It's very strange. But yeah, Moto 1 is kind of just the same thing as like Moto 2, just your generic caster, your generic minion build. But instead of having your minions just suicide every 1 second into the enemy and just explode, he does have to worry about keeping his minions alive. That is an issue that I know that minion builds have, is you kind of run into an issue where, like, when you do Supreme Showdowns and stuff, that sometimes your minions will just, like, run in and die. And they'll run in, you'll spawn your ones, they'll run in and they'll die. And I thought I would just mention that because, at least for me, when I was watching gameplay from, like, minion players, when I was, like, looking into minion builds and whatnot, that seemed really just really fucking frustrating to me, which is also a big reason why, like, back in the OG days when I started playing this game, I didn't end up playing a minion build, because I actually was considering playing a minion build. Also, I should talk about a new mechanic. So, going into the Afterlife season, there's actually been a lot of, like, help being added to minion builds. And the biggest help mechanic that they've added is this new bond mechanic that has a bunch of new legendaries for it, and it's just a buff that you can gain to assist your minions. Oh, please load. Oh no. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so you can get like this new bond buff, which there's also new items for it and whatnot. And it can go up to 3 stacks initially, you can get more stacks, you can buff it up with bond effect, etc. It is worth noting that Moto 2 does not really benefit from the new bond mechanic at all. The problem Moto 2 has is that his minions don't stay alive long enough to like stack up the bond buff. Whereas the other minion builds in the game are going to be able to gain value from the new bond buff. So that might actually like skew things a bit more in their favor. But considering that Moto 2 was also just like already better than Moto 1, I don't think it's going to change things that much. But obviously, I'm just not the expert on this. I cannot be the person to like make that judgment call. All I can do is just try to gather information and try to put something together for the few minion players that there are. And apparently you can get bond down to under a second. So then it would work for Moto 2, so I guess that's not a void. But it is a lot of just XDD chatting of like just people fucking sending information, and I don't really know if who the fuck to trust and who not to trust. I tried my best to veto as much information as possible. The only thing I'm really confident about is the Iris stuff I mentioned, simply because that came from Ubi or like Uber Elite. I just don't know any Moto players, unfortunately. And then lastly, there is Sage. There's a bunch of new elixirs that got added to the game that actually makes Sage minions look very compelling and very interesting. I think this season I'm going to make it a goal of mine to like look into minions and try to test out some minion builds and just figure out how the archetype works, just so I have a better understanding of it. Because it does feel kind of bad that there's like 5 archetypes in the game, and I'm pretty knowledgeable in like extremely knowledgeable in 3 of them, substantially knowledgeable in 1 of them, aka Dots. And then there's one where it just feels completely lackluster and like I just don't know anything in the sense of minions. So I think maybe like testing new minion builds out on Sage and learning how minions work at the same time could be an interesting challenge. I will say though, the vibe I got from the minion clusters is that it does kind of feel like, sorry, from the minion elixirs, it does kind of feel like they got added specifically for the minion characters themselves. They're not really in the game for Sage to use. They're there for the minion builds themselves to use. But still, we can see if it's any good on Sage. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That's part of the fun of playing this game, is testing things out. Is just, you know, seeing what happens. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Before I finish this off, I do want to talk about I do want to do one last tier list. I thought about making this its own video, I just don't think it's worth it. If I had to rank the archetypes in this game from strongest to weakest, because I know some people were wondering about that from all the videos we made, I think the strongest archetype going to the next tier. Now, this is considering the economy from the next tier. It's considering like how expensive things are going to be, what characters are going to be played. So I'm making some predictions based off that. I think melee attackers are going to be the strongest build. They received a lot of buffs this season and already just seem like the strongest. I think ranged attacker builds are going to be the second strongest. I think ranged attackers on spellcasters are on a similar level of power, but spellcasters are just going to be way more expensive, especially with Selena 2 existing, that I generally just think that, you know, the ranged attacker variants are going to be like a tier below that. I think in third place, we're going to have the spellcasters, the spell hit damage. Maybe I should not use her for spell hit damage. The spell hit damage casters. Oh wait, no, sorry, we have dot builds. Dot builds exist. Sorry, I think the second strongest build is probably gonna be dot build. I think second place is gonna be a tie between attack-based builds and dot builds. I think they both seem very, very strong and powerful. I'm gonna knock dot builds 1 point down simply because I think a lot of the Selena 2 players are gonna be playing dots, which is just gonna make it more expensive, as opposed to playing, you know, ranged attack ranged hit builds. So then in third place, I'll do dot builds. In fourth place, I'll do spellcasters. Spellcasters always have the same issue every single tier. They're very weak in the early to mid game, but once you get them online, they become like absurdly powerful and strong. It's just getting past that hump in the early game feels awful, and it's very difficult. And then in last place, it's gonna be minion builds. I mean, I think in past seasons, like RS2 kind of really carried the minion build archetype, but like, I'm just not a minion believer. I'm gonna be honest with you. It feels like consistently every single season, I see other archetypes outperform the minion archetype. And even though I do see some promise in the minion archetype, maybe there's just not enough players to push it to like that next level. But it does seem to be like the weakest archetype. But of all that being said, though, if you're going to any of like these tier lists and you go archetype by archetype, and you take any of like the archetypes listed as overall best or extremely strong, but especially the overall best, you're just gonna have a good time. Like all the builds in this game are so close to each other. Like all of the fucking like archetypes in this game are clearing SS21 and 20 within like a few days of each other. Like the only real there's some exceptions, like Rosa 2 like clears Rosa 2 Ran 2 like clears like 1 or 2 days earlier than every other archetype. But like this season, I think it was like Rosa 2s that cleared, and on the same day it was like Sage cleared, some attack ranged build cleared. I think a minion build cleared like a day later. It's like everything is so close to each other that it doesn't really matter. The most important thing in this game is just having fun. If you have fun, you can like just get good. You can just get good and just beat the game by being good and smart and doing good upgrades. But with all of that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm sorry that this last video was kind of a letdown in my opinion compared to the previous tier lists. I'm not gonna pretend to act like I know better or anything, but I didn't want to disappoint people by like just not doing an archetype, just being like, oh no, I don't know enough. So I tried to be as honest as possible by saying like what I don't and do not know, and trying to use information from other people to make a somewhat educated guess based on what other people told me. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and all the beautiful things like that. And I'll see you all again next time. Bye bye YouTube. Bye bye.